Spring of 1879 came late to the valley. Snow still clung to the scrub hills north of Bent Willow like regret that wouldn't let go. The town itself, a scattering of board-front buildings and smoke-threaded rooftops, lay quiet under a gray sky, the kind that made men drink early and women work harder. She walked in just after sunrise. The road behind her was 50 miles of dust and frostbitten silence. Her boots were cracked at the toes. The hem of her skirt was stiff with old blood and mud. A baby, swaddled tight in the crook of one arm, slept against her breast. The other 6 followed close behind, smallest to tallest eyes like lanterns gone low, watching everything and nothing at all. Her name was Cora, but no one asked. She stepped into the saloon first. Not for a drink, not for warmth. Just because the door was open and because the baby had started to stir and because she needed to ask somebody where she could find work. Not help. Not kindness. Work. The men inside didn't speak right away. A match struck. A chair creaked. The smell of cheap tobacco and last night's whiskey curled around the room. The man behind the bar didn't look up until she cleared her throat. "I ain't asking for charity," she said. Her voice cracked in the middle, but she didn't repeat herself. "I got hands. I can clean, cook, mend. I got older ones can help. We'll earn what we take." The bartender just stared. A cowboy at the far end of the room leaned forward, then slow and quiet, like a man who'd seen storms build and break 100 times before. He set his cup down soft and stood. He saw the way the boy closest to her held his little sister's hand, knuckles white. Saw the way her shoulders stooped like she'd been carrying the world too long without rest. He saw it all in a glance, and something shifted in his face, nothing soft, just clearer. "You can come out to the ranch," he said. "I got spring calves need tending. You good with stock?" Cora looked at him for a long second. "I can learn." He nodded once, then tipped his hat. "Name's Ellie." She didn't give hers back. Just nodded, gathered her kids, and stepped out into the cold wind like someone who'd done this before and was tired of doing it again. They rode out that afternoon. Eli brought his buckboard and 2 strong horses. The children huddled in the back beneath a patchwork of threadbare quilts. The baby cried once and then went quiet. Cora sat up front, hands in her lap, eyes fixed ahead like if she looked back it'd kill her. The land opened up outside town. Fences broke into open range. Cottonwoods lined the edge of the river like ghosts keeping watch. In the distance the hills rolled on dry and pale like the backs of sleeping animals. The silence between them stretched long. "You come far, Eli?" asked. Cora didn't answer right away. "Far enough," she said. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. They reached the ranch by dusk. The place was old but solid. A weathered barn leaned into the wind like it had learned how to stay upright from stubbornness alone. The house had smoke coming from the chimney and a porch wide enough for children to sit and shell peas when spring finally came. "You can stay in the bunkhouse for now," Eli said. "It's dry. Stove works." Cora climbed down, adjusted the sleeping baby, and helped her children down one by one. She didn't smile, didn't thank him, but something in her eyes had changed. Just a flicker. A lessening of weight, maybe. Inside the bunkhouse the floor creaked and the air smelled of dust and old tobacco. But it was warm. One of the boys whispered, "Is this ours?" Cora crouched beside him and looked him square in the face. "It's not ours," she said. "It's borrowed. We pay our way." He nodded. That night, while the children slept in a pile of limbs and breath and tangled blankets, she sat by the stove and watched the fire. Her hands were cracked, her knuckles scabbed, her eyes didn't blink much. Outside the wind pushed against the boards. Somewhere out past the barn, a calf bawled in the dark. Eli stood on his porch with a lantern in one hand, watching the sky like it might offer answers. He didn't know her story yet, but he'd seen enough to know what a person looked like when they'd run out of road, and still kept walking. That first week was all wind and work. The March air cracked cold in the mornings and warm just enough by midday to soften the ground, turning the yard around the barn to mud thick as bread dough. Cora rose before the sun. She lit the stove, fed the fire, dressed the children in layers, then stepped outside with her sleeves rolled and her jaw set. Eli had cattle to tend and fences to ride. He didn't make conversation unless it had purpose. But he noticed the way she dug her heels into the earth when she hauled buckets from the well. The way she stitched her eldest boy's coat back together at night, slow and neat as if every thread carried weight. She took to cleaning the tack room without being asked, started boiling water for coffee before he made it out the door. She didn't speak much, but she listened. And when the baby cried, her body moved without thought, swaying on tired legs, crooning some low tune too quiet for word. The children didn't cause trouble. They kept close to the bunkhouse during the day, stacking stones into pretend houses, or helping in ways that made Eli ache a little, like they already knew what it meant to try too hard to be useful. It was on the sixth day that Cora paused long enough to breathe. She was gathering eggs when the sun broke through the clouds for the first time all week. She stood still for a minute, palms open toward the light like she might catch it. A small sound caught in her throat, half a sigh, half a swallow, and then it was gone. That night after supper, Ellie brought her an extra blanket, just held it out and said, "Still gets cold at night out here." Cora nodded. "Thank you." He turned to leave, then paused. "I lost someone once," he said, not looking at her. "A long time ago. Thought I'd never get back on my feet." She didn't ask who, didn't ask when, just sat there holding the folded wool in her lap like she could feel the years in it. "I didn't come here to be saved," she said finally. "I know." She looked up then. There was something behind her eyes that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite fear. "He left," she said. "The youngest was just born. Said he'd be back. Never was. Ellie didn't speak. "Winter came early," she went on, voice rough. "We stayed too long in a place that didn't want us. I buried one before I left. Couldn't carry her. That hung in the air like ash. I carried the rest," she said, "because there wasn't any other choice." Eli's face didn't change, but he sat down on the porch step beside her. The lantern's flame behind the window cast long shadows out into the yard. "My brother," he said after a while, "took a fall off a wild roan. We were just kids. My folks never really got over it. Sent me off to work cattle when I was 15. I kept going west. Figured maybe if I went far enough the grief'd stay behind me." She looked at him then, not like someone who needed comfort, but like someone measuring a man's words against his silence. "Did it work?" she asked. Eli didn't answer, but his eyes said no. The wind shifted. A coyote called out from the hills, sharp and sudden. The baby stirred inside the bunkhouse, and Cora rose to her feet like someone who would never get used to stillness. Before she stepped inside, she turned back. "You were right to ask if I could work with stock," she said. "That's what this is out here. Survival. Not charity." Eli gave a slow nod. "And I'll earn every damn inch of it." With that, she closed the door behind her. Eli stayed a while longer, listening to the night. Somewhere down the road, maybe things would ease between them. But tonight it was enough to know she'd chosen to speak. Enough to know the land hadn't taken her spirit. Not yet. Subscribe and let the land tell another truth. The spring deepened. The snowmelt came fast, roaring down from the high hills in creeks that overflowed their beds, turning the pastures slick and greedy. Mud clung to Boots' wagon wheels and anything fool enough to cross it. Still, the ranch work never paused. Cora rose with the light and worked until her body threatened collapse. She learned to mend fence wire, to shovel stalls, to saddle and unsaddle with fingers gone raw. She helped birth calves in the night, one knee in the straw, steadying the bawling creatures as if she'd been doing it her whole life. The older kids helped where they could. Eli let the two eldest ride fence with him when the weather turned warm enough. They returned one afternoon covered in burrs and sweat, proud like they'd been to war. The little ones took to gathering kindling and hauling water, their laughter sometimes rising in bursts through the still air, sharp, bright notes that cut through the silence like bells. Eli watched all of it without speaking much. He noticed how Cora changed. Her shoulders straightened. Her hands moved with more certainty, but her eyes stayed watchful, like she never truly believed she could stop moving, not for good. One evening, late April, Eli invited her to dinner in the main house. Just her. "I make a stew every Sunday," he said, clearing his throat. "Wouldn't mind company if you're up for it." Cora hesitated. Not out of fear exactly, just the weight of what it meant to step into someone's space like that. She came, though, wore her cleanest dress, braided her hair back neat, sat at his table like she'd forgotten how to belong at one. He served stew and biscuits, a pie he'd bought in town. She took small bites, careful, her hands folded in her lap when she wasn't holding a fork. "You live out here alone?" she asked. "Since my father passed, I kept the place going." "Ain't much, but it's mine." Cora nodded. "You ever want something different?" Eli looked out the window. The sun was going down, streaking the sky in bruised purples and orange. "I used to think I'd go back east. Start fresh. But I never did. Figured if I could build something out here it'd mean more." She studied him a while. "There's not much out here but dust and silence." "Sometimes that's the best part," he said, and she almost smiled. After supper she helped him wash the dishes. Side by side, sleeves rolled, their hands moved in a rhythm that didn't need words. When her fingers brushed his by accident, she didn't flinch. Before she left, Eli paused at the door. "You're doing good work," he said. She looked up at him, weary but steady. "It's not just about work." "No," he said. "It ain't." They stood like that for a moment. Not close, not far. Just two people carrying too much, trying to figure what could be shared. That night Cora lay awake on the narrow bunkhouse bed, the baby curled against her chest. The wind had stilled. The children breathed quiet around her. But something else moved in her now, like hope or fear pretending to be hope. She closed her eyes, knowing tomorrow would come early, knowing she would rise again and work and keep on. But now there was a place she could walk to where someone might be glad to see her come. And that was more than she'd had in years. May brought a heat that cracked the earth and chased the snow back to the highest ridges. Calves grew stronger. The children shed their coats and moved like saplings after a hard freeze, wary at first, then wild. Cora found rhythm. Not ease, not yet, but rhythm. She rose early, worked hard, rested little. The bunkhouse still smelled of wood smoke and damp cotton, but it was cleaner now. Orderly. A place made livable by stubborn hands. Eli came by more often. Not for anything urgent. Just to check on the boiler. To drop off flour. To mention a broken gate or ask if one of the boys could help gather strays. Sometimes they spoke under the porch roof after sundown. Nothing deep, but the silences between them had softened. One evening, Cora fixed his collar where it had started to fray. He let her standing still while her fingers moved with quiet precision. "You don't have to," he said. "I know," she said, and kept stitching. The next morning he brought her a small tin of coffee ground, fine, wrapped in cloth. She didn't say thank you, just opened it, breathed in, and said, "Smells like home, sort of." He watched her for a second. Where was home? She hesitated. "Near the Pecos. Dry land. My folks tried farming. Drought took the rest. You ever think about going back? No, she said. There's nothing left. Eli nodded. He understood that kind of absence. They started to work more side by side, fixing fence, tending to a sick heifer that wouldn't eat. The older kids kept the younger ones in line, and in the spaces between chores Cora and Eli talked without needing to. He told her about the dog he'd had as a boy, mean little thing with one eye and a limp. She told him about the first time she'd seen snow, how it scared her until she tasted it and realized it wasn't poison, just cold. She laughed when she said it. Not a full laugh, but the sound surprised them both. Eli looked at her like he'd heard music in a quiet church. You could stay, he said once late in the day as the sun pulled long shadows across the field. She turned to him. We are staying. I mean longer, he said. Not just until you get back on your feet. Cora didn't answer right away. She knelt to check the fence wire. Her fingers moved slow, thoughtful. I don't want to owe anybody, she said. You wouldn't, Eli replied. I'm not offering rescue. Just space, space. She stood, brushed the dirt from her skirt. Her eyes met his, tired but clear. I'll think about it. That night, after the children had settled, Cora stepped outside. The sky was full of stars, sharp and cold. She looked up at them for a long time, then back at the quiet house. A warm yellow light flickered in the kitchen window. It was the first time in years she didn't feel like running, but she also knew better than to trust peace when it came too easy. She had trusted once before, and it had nearly cost her everything. Summer's edge brought something harder with it. Not the weather, it stayed dry and clear, but a shift in the air like the sound before a storm that hasn't shown itself yet. It came in the form of a rider, a man in a dusty coat with silver spurs and a voice like gravel. He arrived midday, asked for water, and squinted toward the bunkhouse like he half expected ghosts. Cora was in the yard, a child on each hip, sweat darkening her back. The man's eyes fixed on her. Cora. She froze. Eli stepped out of the barn, hand resting near his belt but not reaching for anything yet. You know him. Her jaw clenched. That's William. The children had gone still instinctively. The older boys stepped forward. The younger ones pressed into her skirt. Thought you were dead, she said flatly. William grinned, slow and cold. Figured you'd think that. Didn't have much choice. Took a job headed north. Got waylaid. 4 years, she said. He dismounted, brushed dust from his coat. Didn't know where you were. Heard from someone in town you were out here. Ellie didn't move. What do you want? William looked him over. My family. Cora stepped forward. You left us with nothing. Not even a note. I buried a daughter. Carried the rest across 2 counties with blisters on their feet and fever in their blood. You don't get to come back and act like they're yours now. I'm their father. You were, she said, her voice like flint. They don't even remember your face. Silence fell like a hammer. Eli took a slow breath. You can have your water. Then you ride on. William looked from Eli to Cora. Something mean flickered in his eyes. You think this is settled? The law might see it different? Cora didn't blink. Let it. I got witnesses. I got scars. And I've got something you never had the stomach for proof. I stayed. William left that day, but the dust he stirred didn't settle. That night the children were quiet at supper. Cora didn't eat much. Eli waited until the table was cleared before he spoke. He won't be back, he said. You don't know that? Eli looked at her. Then let's be ready. She nodded. I'm not afraid of him. I'm just tired of ghosts showing up like they have a right. You've got people now, he said. Cora looked at him a long while. Do... Eli didn't flinch. Yeah. You do. The next morning she rose early and hitched the wagon, drove the two oldest into town, sat with the sheriff, told the whole story, every hard detail she'd once locked behind her teeth. When she came back, Eli met her at the gate. She didn't say anything, just walked past him, climbed down, and unhitched the team with movements as steady as rainfall. "You did what you had to," he said softly. Cora nodded once. "And I'll keep doing it." That night the baby cried harder than usual. Eli heard her from the porch, and before he could think better of it, he walked to the bunkhouse and knocked. Cora opened the door, tired-eyed and barefoot, the child wailing in her arms. "Let me hold him," Eli said. She hesitated, then handed him over. Eli took the boy with a kind of reverence, bouncing him gently, murmuring nonsense until the crying ebbed into hiccup. "You've done this before," Cora said quietly. "I had a niece," he said. "Long time ago." She watched him rock the baby. "You're not what I expected." "I'm not sure what I am," he replied. Her voice was low. "Neither am I anymore." They stood in the doorway like that, a quiet rhythm passing between them. Something not yet spoken, but no longer hidden. By midsummer, the ranch felt different. Not peaceful, there was too much work for that, but steady. Like a wagon that had found its groove in the ruts. The children laughed more, ran farther. The older ones chopped wood without being asked. The littlest, now crawling, chased sunlight across the bunkhouse floor. Cora worked just as hard, but she'd started pausing now and then, to sip her coffee slow, to sit in the grass and braid her daughter's hair, to look up when Eli passed by instead of looking away. And Eli, he let himself care. He brought the boys into town for supplies, taught them how to read brands, let them fall asleep in the wagon on the ride home. He fixed the broken hinge on the bunkhouse door without being asked. He made space where he could. Still, they hadn't spoken again about staying, or about William. But when the letter came, they didn't need to. It arrived in a brown envelope sealed in wax, left at the post by a man who gave no name. The sheriff sent word by Ryder. Eli rode to town and returned grim. He handed it to her without a word. Cora opened it slowly, hands sure but tense. The ink was smudged in places, the writing tight and slanted. She read in silence. Then she folded it and put it in the stove. "He's filing with the judge," she said. "Says I took the children. Wants to make a case." Ellie didn't move. "You told the truth. The sheriff believes you." "That may not matter," she said low. "If he wants a trial, I have to stand in front of a room full of strangers and tell them everything. You've done harder things." Cora looked down at her hands. "I don't want them to see me as weak." "They won't." "Whoa." She raised her eyes to him. "What if I lose?" Eli stepped closer. "Then we fight harder." She didn't cry. Not then. But her shoulders shook just once. He reached out carefully and rested his hand on her back. "I'm with you," he said. The trial was set for late August. In the weeks leading up, Eli drove her to town twice a week to meet with the sheriff and the judge. The children stayed behind with one of the hands and a neighbor's wife. In those quiet rides down the long dirt road, something shifted. They spoke more. Eli told her about a woman he'd nearly married in Kansas, years back before the war. Cora told him about her mother's voice, soft as river moss, and how it used to sing her to sleep when her father came home angry. They didn't speak of love, but they didn't need to. The night before the hearing, Eli came to the bunkhouse and knocked. Cora stepped out, wrapped in a shawl, face lit by the lantern glow inside. "I made coffee," he said. "Couldn't sleep." She followed him to the porch. They sat in silence a while, sipping from tin cups, listening to the wind push softly through the trees. He turned to her. "You scared?" "I'd be stupid not to be." He nodded. "You're not stupid." She glanced at him. "You think I'll win?" "I think you already have," he said. But I'll be there, in that room, right behind you." Cora looked away, blinking fast. "You don't owe me that." "I know." She set her cup down. Her voice barely rose above the wind. "If this goes wrong, if they take them, I won't survive it." He met her eyes. "Then we won't let it go wrong." And for the first time since she'd walked into Bent Willow with 7 children, and nothing but her name, Cora leaned against someone. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. The courtroom in Bent Willow was nothing more than the old Grange Hall cleaned up and cleared out with a judge brought in from the county seat. The benches creaked. The windows were cracked open for air, though none moved. Cora sat straight-backed at the front, her dress plain, her hair pulled tight. Eli sat just behind her, hands resting on his knees, eyes never leaving her. The children had stayed with the neighbor. The littlest still didn't understand. The oldest understood too well. William stood across the room with a lawyer from Santa Fe, slick and smooth-spoken, wearing shoes too polished for this town. He opened with pity. Said Cora was overwhelmed, ill-equipped, in need of rest. Said William hadn't abandoned them, only lost his way. Cora listened, stone-faced. When it was her turn, she stood slowly. The judge asked her to speak plain. She did. "I don't have money," she said. "I don't have papers. I have 7 children, and for 4 years I've fed them, clothed them, carried them, healed them when they were sick, and buried one when I couldn't." She looked at William. He left without a word. No injury. No death notice. Just gone. "And I did what I had to do." Her voice never rose, but the air changed. "I don't need a rescue. I need the law to see what's real. These kids know my voice in the dark. They reach for me when they're sick. They listen when I speak because they know I stayed." The judge didn't interrupt. She turned slightly, eyes catching Eli's just for a second. "I've made a life. It's hard. It's ugly sometimes. But it's honest. And it's home." When she sat, the room stayed quiet. The judge read through the papers, asked a few questions, watched William shift in his chair when pressed. The ruling was short. Full custody to the mother. No visitation unless sought by the children, and only when they were grown enough to ask for it themselves. William left without a word. He didn't look back. Cora stepped outside into the white heat of noon. The dust blew low across the street. Eli came up beside her, hat in hand. "It's done," he said. She nodded. He waited, then asked gentle, "What now?" Cora looked toward the edge of town, toward the hills rising like old bones against the sky. "I go home," she said. They rode in silence, but it was a different silence than before. Not hollow. Not afraid. Just full. When they reached the ranch, the children came running, full of questions, arms outstretched. She held them all, even the ones too big to be carried. That evening after supper, she stepped out to the porch where Eli was fixing the hinge on the screen door again. She leaned beside him, arms folded. "You said something a while back," she said, "about staying." He nodded, but didn't look at her. "I've been thinking about it," she said. Now he looked. "I don't need a man," she said. "I want that clear." "I know, but I might want this. Not just the work. The rest, too." Eli said nothing for a moment. Then, quiet as wind through grass, "I'd be proud to have you." She nodded just once. They didn't touch. Not yet. But the space between them finally stopped holding back. Inside, the children were laughing. The baby was teething. The sky was streaked with color, and the ranch stood still and solid in the cooling air. Cora looked out over it all and exhaled, not because the work was done, but because the road at last had led somewhere worth stopping. Fall settled in slow and golden, brushing the hills with color and the mornings with frost. The air turned crisp. The children's voices rang out across the fields, chasing one another through dry grass and half-built forts of scrap wood and dreams. Cora's days stayed full but different now. She moved through them with less urgency, more breath. The ache in her shoulders hadn't left, but it no longer felt like punishment. It felt earned. Eli built a new clothesline outside the bunkhouse. He fixed the pump near the barn. And one afternoon he brought her something wrapped in oilcloth, a carved wooden box worn smooth from use. She opened it slow. Inside lay a silver ring, simple and sturdy. "I know we haven't spoken it plain," he said, "and you don't need a man to make it real, but I wanted to ask." She looked at the ring, then at him. "I've had someone leave, and I've walked through enough dark to know what's real and what ain't. I don't want promises you can't keep." Eli met her eyes steady. "Then I won't give any I can't carry." Her voice barely rose. "You want all of us, not just me. I want what you are. All of it." She took the ring, slid it onto her finger. It fit like it had waited for her. Not flashy, not perfect, just right. They didn't make a fuss. No church, no preacher. Just a meal with the children and a soft word passed between them one night beneath the stars. Eli cleared a room in the main house, built bunk beds with the boys. The bunkhouse stood empty, swept and waiting just in case someone ever needed it again. The baby began walking by, winter fat-legged and loud. The older ones helped in the barn, read books by lamplight, made jokes at supper. They were growing into something whole again, and Cora, for the first time in years, allowed herself to rest. Not often, not long, but some evenings, with her feet up and a cup of coffee in hand, she'd watch the land stretch out quiet and endless beyond the porch. She'd feel the warmth of Eli beside her, the low hum of life inside the house, and know she hadn't just survived. She had returned to herself, to something better. There would be hard seasons ahead. Stock would die. Children would fall sick. The roof would leak. The world would never stop testing its people. But now she didn't stand alone. She had built something that wouldn't vanish at the sound of a horse leaving in the night. She had chosen this place, this man, this life, wide and rough and filled with noise and light. And that choice was hers. On the first snowfall, the children rushed outside with wild eyes and bare hands. Cora stood at the door, arms crossed, laughing. Eli came up behind her, slipping his arm around her waist. "They'll catch cold," he said. "They'll catch joy," she said. "Let 'em." The snow fell soft and slow, blanketing the yard in silence. It coated the porch rail, the fence posts, the top of the barn. The world looked remade, white and new and full of quiet hope. Cora leaned into him, her breath misting in the cold. This wasn't a fairy tale, but it was theirs, and it was real. The trail waits for no one. Subscribe and move.